good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
You're obsessed with her, and you're obsessed with her daughter!
All right, easy, Geraldo.
And welcome back to Horror Queers. We are doing a special one-off episode on Apple TV's Servant, and we are joined by Terry Mesnard of Gaily Dreadful and Scarred for Life. And folks, this is about the 5th time we have tried to record this, and this is going to be the one that nails it.
Did you hit record?
Shut up, you. Nobody likes you.
It's fine. I'm super excited. Again, both of y'all have been reviewing this show back and forth for, both seasons, actually, which has been super fun.
Yes. Terry estimated that we have somewhere between, 50 and 60 pages of reviews?
We're sitting at 60 pages for season 2 right now.
That is banana pants.
It's pretty wild.
Well, I watched this show simply for pleasure, which was very nice.
It's not entirely true, Trace. We did cover season 1 and the first 2 episodes of season 2 for the Patreon.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we did.
It's the pandemic, folks. We're still adjusting. Okay, so what did folks think of this second season?
Okay, wait, I'm sorry. First of all, really quick, if you've never seen Servant, we're going to be spoiling it. Mm-hmm. I don't know why you'd be watching this if you haven't seen any of it, especially season 2. But yeah, we're going to be spoiling it because I don't know when this is dropping, like after the season finale airs, but
it's like the day of.
Yeah, but we're also not going to handhold you through it. So if you haven't seen it, we're not going to be like, well, this is exactly what happens. Although who knows? Maybe we will.
No, a big part of this is we're doing this as a special edition because we want people to see that it's an important show and it's worthy of being talked about. For me, this is actually my favorite show that's airing right now. There's a lot of really good quality television on right now, and I feel like Servant is the one that hits it out of the park, and people just aren't giving it its due.
Well, the only reason I'm here is because I was hoping one of you had a Betamax player.
Oh, God.
I realized I was watching that this isn't a Betamax tape.
I was going to say, Terry, that's a VHS.
But as someone who is old enough to have had a Betamax tape, I do not have one anymore, I will say. But I had to bring the gag in it because that's such a plot point in this that was such an eager moment for both Joe and I. We're like, what's on the tape? What's on the tape?
What is on that motherfucking tape?
So wait, was Betamax, was it video too, or was it just audio?
It was both.
It was both. It was like a better VHS. Like people liked the video quality of it better, but it was more expensive and
yeah.
Wait, is it a video in the season? I don't know why I thought it was just audio.
Yes, it's a video.
It's a video, Trace.
I promise I watched the season.
Trace was cooking throughout the season. He was drinking throughout the season.
I wasn't reviewing it critically after episode 2, so I was like, all right, cool. I can have a glass of wine while I watch this.
It was basically like, it is the equivalent to the HD DVD / Blu-ray battle.
Oh, and VHS one.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. And
so that's why Sony had so much writing on the Blu-ray, because the beta was a Sony product, and so it was like, is this going to be beta all over again when the Blu-ray came out?
That's hilarious. Yeah.
And that's why it becomes such an issue in the season of Servant, is because you can't just go out and get a Betamax player. Like, you can't just rent these from anywhere. People have to have a working tape of it, and those are very rare.
All right, so Joe, you came up with a very bold statement where you said it's like this show is your favorite thing you've seen on TV, like right now.
Mm-hmm. For me, this is the kind of show that, honestly, it feels like it's so prestige. It's got top quality acting. It's attracting a roster of really exciting directorial talent. Mostly for me, it's the way that they use the single location. So the Turner's Brownstone in Philadelphia, the way that they have managed to capture the essence and use the camera, the framing. I just think it's a really exciting show to watch. And it's usually willing to be weird and odd, kind of like how Terry's Gone Green.
You are green, Terry.
Everything on this recording is going
It's okay.
super
We're
weird.
gonna leave it, and hopefully it fixes itself.
I am so not green on my end. I don't understand.
You're green on my end. And now I can't hear you. I saw you mouth
I
in
mouthed
green.
it.
Oh.
Mother.
There you go.
All
You're
right,
back. You're back.
Yeah.
Thank God.
It's a drinking game, folks. Every time Terry goes green, take a shot.
Mhm.
But yeah, so Terry, what is it that attracts you about this second season in particular?
Well, I would go a little bit further and say this is probably my favorite of the continuing horror stories, like not a self-contained story, because I do think, Haunting of Hill House has some stuff to say, but like in terms of an ongoing story, this is probably my favorite horror television series I've ever seen, and it's for a lot of the same reasons that you said. I think the writing is top notch.
Mhm.
I think that it kind of tickles that like Lost feeling back in the day when like you'd be watching an episode and you'd want to like dissect it and figure out what did they mean when they did this, or what was that little detail or that camera angle or that whatever the case may be. I think that is something that is really, really exciting to me, and I've loved writing about it because there's so much to unpack in each episode, and it's only like they're 30 minutes long, 30 to 40, and there's so much. It's so dense.
Actually, the episodes this season were shorter because there were a couple last season that went beyond 30. Most of the ones this season were like right at 30 or just under. But I'm glad you brought up the Lost comparison, because the whole time watching the finale, I was like glued to the screen and I kept checking the timer, not because I was like, oh my God, when is this going to end? I was like, oh my God, when is it going to end? Because I don't know like how much like time they have left to like just tell me things.
Oh yeah.
Which is how you always felt.
And it's the kind of show, too, where particularly when we were covering that first season, we didn't know whether it was going to get picked up for a second season because it seemed like nobody was talking about it. So the first season ends on this big cliffhanger where Jericho is abducted by Leanne and this swarm of random people just disappears in the middle of the street. And then that was it. And we didn't know whether we were going to ever get any more. So one of the joys of covering the second season in particular is knowing that there's at least 2 more seasons of this coming. And it was 6, and then I think they dialed it back down to 4.
No, they did, but it's been renewed for sure for 1, but it hasn't been renewed for a 4th yet, has it?
No, it seems like the kind of thing
they'll just do it.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you guys too about that, because Shyamalan's original idea, he said, I have like, again, like it's like the Lost thing. I have like a blueprint for 6 10-episode seasons, and now we're at 4, which I think that was the compromise with him and Apple TV, maybe when it wasn't like getting all the word of mouth that it should have been getting. So they're like, hey, can you parse it down a bit? And he's like, I guess I'll put it to 4 seasons.
Yeah, it's interesting because I could imagine people watching the show and feeling like, oh, it looks really good and sure the acting is great, but there just isn't enough happening in some of these episodes, which I would very strongly disagree with. But I think it's also because I've been looking at it very critically and looking for those Easter eggs and really just reveling in what the show is doing. But I have wondered if this is, I'm going to say it, I wonder if this is like too much of a prestige kind of drama for people. And they're like, no, but where is the gore? Where is that kind of shit?
I saw one, again, I haven't really been reading reviews for this at all, but I did see one of the finale where they were like, oh, we were getting really worried of the lack of answers the show was giving us. And it's so interesting watching this season. I was like, at a certain point, I was kind of like, I don't even care if I'm getting answers because I'm so into what I'm watching. Lost, Lost was so built. I'm sorry to bring it back to Lost. It was so built around, like, what's happening? That was the water. That was the water cooler conversation. It's like, what's like the secret? And that is here, but honestly, it's one of the first true times where I'm like, oh, honestly, I'm enjoying the journey so much that the destination I'm not too concerned about while watching this show.
Well, and while it's giving, I don't know if this is the same for you guys, but while it's giving me answers, it's not exactly what I expected in some cases, particularly like with the revelation that they might be angels or that there might be some,
what
religious. I know. But I was like, so I'm watching a religious thing, like, and there's DNA in that all the way from the very beginning. Obviously, she's escaping a cult, but that surprised me, and it wasn't a disappointing surprise. It was like, oh, okay, so that's what we're watching. I want to know more.
Yeah. At every junction, it seems to be doing that, where it says this is a logical way to pursue this story, but it's often the one that you would have put like 4th or 5th in your guess of where we were going to go next.
Well, or it gives you an answer to something, but then as soon as it does, it introduces another mystery or raises another question. And I mean, I will confess, there are some times where I'm like, fuck, I hope that, like, again, when it gets to the end, like, there aren't going to be things where, like, well, this doesn't make sense because of this and this and this and this. Like, and that was something that I know plagued Lost.
Yep.
But at this point, I'm just like, I don't even care. I'm enjoying this ride. And I am a little perturbed that Dorothy still doesn't know. Like, I mean, I guess she kind of seems to know, but then she, like, they keep walking her revelation back.
That moment
I
in
know.
the finale. Where he's about to tell her. That what.
And you're just like, Sean, fucking spit it out.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, Jericho is back, and it's like, fuck.
I know. When it's back, I was like, oh my God, no. Like, just tell her.
Couldn't you waited just like 2 more seconds, Leanne, to bring him back?
Well, and particularly, so I had a huge issue with the episode called 2 a.m. It's the episode that M. Night directed himself this season. And that's the one where every morning at exactly 2 a.m., that's when Dorothy wakes up and she physically assaults Leanne. And to me, it's one of the most disturbing, not just episodes, but like those physical encounters escalating and becoming progressively more violent. It became very difficult for me to get on board with what the show is doing because I was like, I don't know how I can forgive Dorothy or sympathize with her after this.
Well, okay, sorry, you can finish your thought because I have a piggyback onto that.
Sure. Yeah, so basically it was one of those things where I was like, I need this next episode to have her acknowledge what she's done because we can't just keep pretending like Sean would say, no, it's fine. Like, you're nearly murdering this girl in our attic, but I'm not going to tell you the truth because I'm too afraid for you. And that actually is where we really start to lean into the idea that Dorothy will die by suicide if she learns the truth. Like, that's when nooses begin appearing as visual iconography. So I'm still not 100% on board. It's the one piece of the show that I still don't 100% love, but particularly after the finale where we did almost get there, but also we almost got that news, folks. Like,
yeah, we did. My piggyback was just, Joe knows this, but I fucking love Dorothy. I think Lauren Ambrose's performance in both seasons,
it's amazing.
It is wonderful, and she it goes from like silly camp sometimes to, again, like heartfelt, and like again to the suicide, the almost suicide scene. It's just like she's playing so many levels. But I also do wonder, like, even without her abusing Leanne, for me it's fine, but I do wonder for the casual viewer if Dorothy is too self-involved, too selfish. So, like, do you think that she's a likable character? I like her, but I don't know if I would say that she's likable.
You know, I think it's an interesting point because, like, I think when you were talking about this and her likability, I was thinking back to Breaking Bad, for instance, where by the end of the show, the actress was getting death threats.
Skylar,
for her performance and they're like, why are you being such a bitch to
your drug running, murdering husband? Yes.
And so I do think that I think it's an interesting point because this character isn't likable. Like, there's a lot about her. She's very funny, but I don't think she's particularly a likable person. But I find that so fascinating because Lauren leans into that a whole lot. Like, you talked a little bit about her performance going from camp to like being terrifying. And I was thinking about this between a couple episodes. One was the 2 a.m. that you were talking about, Joe, where she is a force to be reckoned with.
She's
and she is
scary.
terrifying in that. And then I think about when she meets Courtney with the K, her father's current love interest. And Courtney with the K is like, Dorothy Turner for Action News 8. And she's like, gives her this like curl of the lip. And it verges into that kind of like camp direction that she does throughout the season. And then by the end of the that episode where she is like telling Leanne, you know, oh, we're not going to tell Sean about that thing in the basement. And there's this like look that is both camp, but it's also incredibly heartbreaking and terrifying at the same time. The little look that she gives. I do think that her journey in the last 2 seasons has been probably my favorite part of this show.
Yeah. It's tricky because I think it is the one that gets to be the showiest. I mean, there's been some really good moments for Rupert Grint's Julian this season. You know, the second last episode is basically him ODing because he can't handle the secrets anymore.
Oh my God, there was so much cocaine in that episode.
Much cocaine. All I could think of was like, somebody needs to stop this guy because he is going to OD. And then he actually does.
And when you want to talk about directing too, that shot when he does one of his sniffs and it goes up
my God,
and it spins around into like a tower of a bathroom. Oh, Again, that's what I'm about, like, using the
Yes.
singular space as like to its advantage. Like, again, they're having so much fun. It's not like psychedelic or like otherworldly, but they're just finding ways to use it that make it feel so claustrophobic or open or like vertigo.
Whatever they need. And I love the addition of the attic and the basement this season, because it has kind of opened up the world into these new exciting places. Like, we got to see what home looks like to Leanne and the way she decorates things, but then also that basement that, honestly, it's a definitive horror space. Like, the cracks in the floor, the ooze, the gross water. You know, that's where Roscoe's hypnosis sequence happens. That's where ultimately Aunt Josephine...
And that's interesting too, because so in our Patreon episode discussing the first season and the first 2 episodes of this season, Joe, one of the things you pointed out was, I really hope that we get to like, that there are places in this house that we haven't seen yet that we get to visit. And that is exactly what happens.
I also really like speaking of the spaces, the last episode where we see the hole in the wall, and that is where she is buried, the fried corpse and there's of Aunt Josephine, and there are places in between the walls that someone could fit. And I'm like, okay, is that going to be used next season? Because at the end of the day, we are confined to this house, and they do such a good job of making it feel both, like you said, claustrophobic and giant. I love some of the pans that have happened this season where it's like down the whole long hallway.
Going up the stairwell.
Yeah.
Looking down.
It reminds me, and I don't know how much of it is CGI, if any of it is. Maybe they found a way to make it all practical, but it reminds me a lot of the pan shots that you would see in Finch's Panic Room or in Fede Alvarez's Don't Breathe. Like, it's very similar to that.
I think for me, though, it's seamless. Like, I also can't tell whether this is a set or an actual house, or they found some kind of way to, like, open the space up. But the way that they're using the space, and then particularly this season, we saw it a little bit in the first season, and obviously it's an Apple TV show, so we are getting a little bit of product placement, but the use of found footage and screen horror this season. So obviously where they go to the mall, we've got that funny moment. But to me, the standout is the pizza episode.
The pizza heist.
Oh my God.
Which is the funniest episode of the season, but also there is a literal horror movie happening in Toby filming this as he explores this mansion, and we are waiting because we know that Leanne is there, and it's just a question of what the fuck is happening.
Well, and I love that moment in particular, because it's us watching the Turners, watching through the device, watching Toby. So it's like this, so many different ways of looking at this footage, of truly being that kind of found footage second screen aesthetic, that just like you're both like wanting to know how the Turners are going to react. You're wanting to know, oh my gosh, is something going to be around that corner because it's in first person perspective. Like, there's all of that just going on that is so, it was such a standout moment for me.
Even, I mean, I'm diverting a little bit here because I'm just thinking about how much this, because the first season's very much, it's focused on Dorothy and Sean, and like their POV for the most part. And I like this season that we actually get a lot more, not even explanation, but more development for Leanne, and specifically Julian, who is, I think, a very unlikable character.
Oh yeah, he's the worst.
Yeah. but that episode when him and Leanne have sex and he plays that voicemail.
It breaks your heart.
It doesn't excuse his behavior, but it makes I understand it so much more, and I love that Rupert Grant got to do that, because I think he's good in the role, but he's getting a lot of one notes to play. He's just playing the same grumpy guy, so I like
the grumpy comedic relief.
Yeah, and so I like seeing him break down and struggle. And you know, I didn't even realize watching it, we don't see him in the finale.
No.
So he's as far as we know, in the hospital still.
Yeah. Sean gives him a phone call, and that's it.
When I was thinking back about the season as a whole, what I realized was that we're seeing like the rise of Leanne in this season, but also the fall of Julian, because he starts the season and is like, they crisscross at a point where they have sex in kind of an awkward moment in the episode, but like he is on this downward trajectory while she is coming into her own, and it's that moment when they cross that is like the sort of defining moment for both of them, because after that he ODs and she comes into her own and is like, no, I'm ready to fight. Yeah,
so this is the one thing that I don't know anything about your reactions to it, because we haven't actually talked about the finale between the three of us. What did you make of the final moments of this finale, where Leanne is doing her voiceover? She has brought Jericho back to the Turners. but we get this kind of voiceover that is eventually revealed to be speaking to the charred corpse of Aunt Josephine in the walls, but also seems to be speaking to a larger power about how she doesn't care if she's bad and she's gonna do what she wants now.
I was excited. I wanted it to keep going.
I'm kind of mixed on, not mixed on the execution of it. I thought it was perfect, and I'm so excited to see what season 3 is going to bring. But I'm not quite sure whether this was meant to be I'm embracing my darkness, or whether it's meant to be I'm realizing that what the cult is saying about being pure, because this entire season has been about like refuting the virginity aspect, refuting like the pure, like she's listening to music that like she's told is sinful. So she is like repealing all of these like highly lofty religious undertones in order to be human. And so I'm not really sure if I take that as being I'm embracing the darkness in me, a la Carrie, and I'm going to burn everything down, or whether it's like I'm
just gonna do what I want.
Right.
Yeah. Like I'm gonna be a fucking human being.
Because I don't think Leanne has ill intentions. Well, revert that, rewind that.
I mean, I'm not actually like butting heads with you, because I don't think she has them for the Turners, but I don't know what her feelings are beyond that anymore, because now they're a family, right? So she's going to continue to protect them and Jericho. But as we saw, she seemed to take a certain amount of pleasure in killing, factoring into Uncle George's death, and then obviously being the one responsible for Aunt Josephine's death.
I mean, yeah, you want to talk like, people complaining about a lack of gore and violence. That finale delivered that shit in spades.
Yeah, it did. That was exciting.
We started with that hand wound in like the second episode with Julia Ducournau directing, and then we got this fucking charred corpse at the end. Like, do not talk to me about this show not being a horror film and not giving us good.
I am sitting there at the finale, and I mean, again, this is the very end, but like when Miss Josephine gets that thing in her eye, I'm watching it by myself, and I legit went, "Oh, yes,
yeah."
I was telling Terry my screener kept buffering at like all of these inconvenient moments, and I was like, "Oh, no. It's only 30 minutes, Apple. Why can't you?"
Yeah. This is, again, just random, but the how to kill someone and reunite them with their, savior video.
Oh my God.
It reminded...
That video was so fucking funny.
So I was watching this and I was like, okay, this is very like The Invitation, but also like, I don't know why, but like with the Leanne stuff, it's kind of like Pushing Daisies too. So it's like Pushing Daisies with the tone of The Invitation.
Right, yes. And how does the show manage to do all of this? Like, no development thinks, oh, no, they've taken it too far. I'm not on board. This isn't what the show is. I didn't sign up for this. Like, every new development feels organic. When Terry wrote his response back to me for the pizza episode, he was like, I wasn't expecting a heist movie in this show.
Right.
And I was like, you are 100% right. That is literally what it is. They are starting a pizza business to grift people in order to find their missing nanny.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ. I died.
That moment when Dorothy picks up Jesus Christ. I mean, Jesus Christ. There were so many. Oh my God, no! When the dad's like girlfriend comes in and she mimics
Courtney with a K.
She mimics her anchor and she just goes, "Aren't you sweet?"
Yeah.
Or even when Courtney with a K drops to the floor and just starts doing the caterpillar like move, like it's just like an exasperated like, I'm dropping to my knees. I'm like, what is she doing? And all of a sudden she's doing the work.
But maybe that's why, because again, what you're saying is, nothing feels too out of bounds for what the show is. Honestly, a fucking Godzilla foot can come stomp outside their fucking front yard, and I'll be like, yeah okay, like.
We've already seen at least 2 or 3 plagues this season alone.
Yeah.
I just don't understand.
It balances the tone, though. I think because the comedy works, like it's balanced so well with the serious stuff, that I think that makes any kind of weird leaps in logic more palatable. It's like when I talk about parody or something that's, kind of going silly, like, okay, well, I don't really care if it's logical because it's kind of being silly. And while I wouldn't say that Servant is silly, there's enough comedy in it to where, I don't know, like, I'm not sitting there trying to piece things together because it's, which I'll say it's taking itself seriously, because while sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. And that's kind of what makes it work for me.
I do think that it is self-aware enough because there's a scene again with Courtney with the K, I love her, in the car with Julian and his father, where she's like,
"Oh my god,
I don't understand. Do they have a baby or don't
do they not?"
And Julian just like lays out the last 2 seasons of plot, and then is like, "Are you keeping up, Courtney?"
No.
And it's the most absurd litany. Like when you hear somebody say, "Here's the premise of the show and what has happened over the last 20 episodes," or at this point 19, it sounds absolutely bonkers. And then you think, no, but I'm so fully on board with what the show is doing. It's kind of magical.
The other thing that I really do appreciate is I remember Joe and I, you and I were talking about at the end of the first season, like, I don't know how they're going to continue for the planned idea maybe of 6 seasons, because I'm like, how are you going to keep this going?
Yeah.
And then season 2 answered that completely, in my opinion. And then there's moments in the very last episode that I'm like, oh, this is even bigger, because with the arrival of the Betamax tape, and you realize that this isn't just one kooky, culty family living on a farm in Wisconsin. It's, well, here's our member from blah, 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 and here's a member from somewhere else, and these are different geographic locations, so you realize that this cult is actually bigger and more organized than just this one kind of podunk or, that kind of backwards cult idea, that it's actually bigger and more funded, or at least it was at one point, because, again, who's using Betamax tapes?
Yeah, there's that disconnect between the modernity and then the kind of nostalgic antiqueness of this, which I think lends itself well to some of the more religious, dogmatic ideas that it's exploring, right? Like, is this cult old-fashioned, and has it been left in the past? And Leanne represents this emergence into something new. But also, like, these people can literally call forth plagues in addition to Betamax tapes.
Right. And heal massive burn wounds and...
Yeah. With spit and peanut butter and some kind of lard.
Do y'all think that the ending of the show was already known?
I think so.
Okay, I think so too.
I don't think they know exactly what each individual episode is going to be, but I think they know what the end game is.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, not that I even want to be the one to like, oh, like when I finish the series, do I want to go back and make sure everything makes sense? Not really.
No.
But I would bet you that most of it would line up, because I think that these people, the creators of the show, are like, they know what they're doing. Like, I feel like I'm in safe hands with this show.
Yeah. And I guess one of the things that we should acknowledge is that I think even Terry, you and I have made the mistake of doing this, that we call this like an M. Night show, which it is in tone and execution, but it's actually being show run by Tony
Basgallop.
There you go.
Basgallop.
Yeah. But one of the other things that we took notice of, particularly the second season, is that nearly every episode is directed by a woman. There's, I think, 3 exceptions.
Yeah, there's one episode by M. Night, and then I think there's 2 by Nimrod Antal, the director of Vacancy, among others. But the rest of them are Ishana, and it's really, really good female directors. I mean, you have, I'm always going to butcher their names, Julia Ducournau.
Yeah. That's what I say.
And Lisa Brolman.
It's one of those things where, we really have crossed the divide with regard to how prestige directors are now able to find a home on television. And I know some people bemoan the fact that it means that we're maybe not getting new feature films from some of these people. But like M. Night's daughter, she directed 2 of these episodes. She wrote the finale as well. And she's second unit director on his new movie Old, coming out this summer. So part of me is like, maybe the show is also now a launching ground for incredibly talented women.
So to that, though, I also say, well, I do get that. Like, yes, obviously, I would love to see feature films from a lot of these female directors, but also, hey, people, watch Servant. Like, watch the shows that are having the female directors. Like, I mean...
Fucking support the shows.
You can bemoan it, but yeah, go watch these shows because they're doing amazing work.
And really, at the end of the day, that's what I want. I want to be able to have these conversations with more people. So every time somebody says, oh, we started watching the show and now I can go back and catch up and read your reviews, it's like, it's very exciting because it feels like we're immediately going to get a new convert. Like, I don't know how you could watch the show and not just get on board.
That's where the like water cooler, I mean, for the kids today, that's what it was in like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Like whenever like you had like a nighttime soap, which I mean, I'll call this that, I guess. People would go to work the next day. They're standing around the water cooler or their desk or whatever the fuck, talking, oh my god, did you see what happened last night? And the closest thing we've had to that recently, I mean, outside of WandaVision, was Game of Thrones.
Right.
Like, Game of Thrones was really like the last show to have that, which really makes me laugh when people complain about like week-to-week scheduling. I'm like, we just did it with Game of Thrones. Like, and also week-to-week scheduling still exists. Like, not everything is streaming.
Well, yeah, and I do wonder if for some people that is a knock against Servant because they don't want to wait, because the episodes are only 30 minutes and because there is so much mystery. But I also don't think that this is like Trace, when you said, oh, I've fallen behind and I'm going to watch it so that we can have this conversation. I said, try not to watch more than a couple of episodes at a time, because it's not the kind of show that benefits from watching 6 episodes at once.
Even with season 1, I was like, I can do 2 a night. And it's not because I don't like it. It's just because it's a lot. Like, even though
it's heavy.
It is heavy, and it's slow but not boring. It's just like, it's an hour is good for me. I think one night I did 3. But still, it's like, it's also because you want to soak it in, right? Like, if you binge this, you it's easier to miss things.
I also do think that season 2, I don't know if you both feel the same way, is paced better than the first season.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think so.
Because there are times by the end of the first season, it's like, okay, I'm good with this episode and I'm ready. But there are times on this season where it's like, if it weren't for the fact that I'm writing about this, I would want to hit play.
But how much of that do you think is because we actually have seasons 2 and maybe some or all of 3 combined into this season because of shortening it from 6 to 4 seasons?
Maybe, yeah. I feel like they also they have a better sense of what they can deliver in these individual episodes.
Right.
Like, to me, there's something about an escalation in confidence in storytelling this season. All of the performers seem more adept and like settled into their roles, and therefore they can handle this meatier material as well. So I think it's a confluence of factors, but for me, the show is really firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I would agree.
Same. I also think that part of it is because of the way that they film it, because we're confined to such one area that they have to be more creative in how they film it. And I would say that the way they have staged scenes in the second season is a lot more interesting than the way they did in the first season, which isn't to say the first season was bad.
Yeah.
It's just they found more interesting ways of shooting a scene where it's like, oh, we're now seeing a different view of the same room and it looks different. Like, there's a couple times when I'm like, which room is this? Because we're usually seeing it from one perspective. And so I think that they've gotten better at that, and I think that also makes it more visually interesting.
I do agree with you, but even in the first season, like, I mean, I guess it's because, the first season we're being introduced to the space for so much of it, and so, they have to find something new, which makes me more excited for season 3 and how they're going to differentiate it next season. So I did like how I think this is something I pointed out, Joe, with you. There's one episode in that first season where we're watching Dorothy and the little girl who comes inside, like, who just wanders in their house. Right. And it's shot, they're sitting on the stairs, and it's shot, like, the camera's, like, behind, like, the bars on the stairs. And so it's like we're in a prison, like, we're watching them through the jail cell. But then it moves to the bottom of the banister, and we're looking at them all the way up here with the banister in focus. But it's like a split diopter where they're still in focus, too. But it's, again, like, stuff like that where I'm like, I guess maybe that's the exercise, right? Like, the concept for the show come around like, hey, like, here's the basic plot, here's the end game, but also it's one location. So play with it as much as you can. Like, get creative with this.
You've got to get creative. There's a moment in the second last episode of this season, so it's when Julian is in the bathroom doing cocaine. There's a moment where there's an extreme close-up of what is eventually revealed to be a Jenga block that Sean is about to knock over. And I literally could not tell, because it was so creatively shot, if it was a block coming out of the bathroom wall where Julian was, because he was obviously about to topple over. And I couldn't tell if it was a Jenga block or from the bathroom. And so when we do hear him hit the door, I was like, did he just bash his head open, and is he going to die?
There were, I don't know if y'all ever saw these, maybe they were just magazine things, maybe it was like a game where it was like you'd have an extreme close-up of something and you'd have to guess what it was before looking at the answer. It's a zoomed out picture of it. So that's what that reminds me of. And so I mean, that's the thing, like, while narratively this show is, again, full of puzzles, it's also a visual puzzle as you're just like watching it all come together. And I think maybe that's what makes it so fascinating to watch as well.
Okay, so what would you rate season 2 of Servant?
I'm at a B+, I think.
Okay.
I'm at a solid A.
I am also at a solid A.
That's
For
fine.
me, this is like a near perfect season of television. It's giving me really like everything that I want, and also in unexpected ways.
Yeah. No. Again, my B+ isn't a negative. It's just...
Why are you so low, Trace?
Oh my god. I'm such a downer. I just hate everything.
God, Trace. It can't be Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends of Tomorrow is a solid A. I'm sorry. Like,
oh my god.
Servant has nothing on Legends of Tomorrow.
A comparison for another day,
Absolutely.
perhaps.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, folks, we would love to hear from you. So if you have watched the video or listened to this audio and you've been watching Servant Season 2, hit us up. We're interested to hear your thoughts, hear your theories, your speculations. What is going to happen with the end next season? Let us know. And with that, I guess...
Cross out Servant Season 2.
And cross out Horror Queers with special bonus cameo appearance by Gaily Dreadful.
You've made it to the end of another bloody, disgusting podcast. Congratulations. If you like our programming, consider searching for other bloody, disgusting podcasts, such as Creepy, Horror Queers, The Boo Crew, SCP Archives, Nightlight, Margaret's Garden, Nightmare on Film Street, and more.
It was late in the afternoon when the professor and I took our way towards the east, whence I knew Jonathan was coming.
Jonathan Harker has asked me to note this, as he says he is hardly equal to the task, and he wants an exact record kept.
Dear Madam Mina, I have read your husband's so wonderful diary. Strange and terrible as it is true. I will pledge my life on it.
God preserve my sanity, for to this I am reduced. Safety and the assurance of safety are things of the past.
I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula.
Listen to Regarding Dracula wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm.